I've been able to see people's souls since I was a child, and I could even hear them speak because of my special ability. My parents loathed me and favored my adopted sister, Shauna. Later, Shauna landed herself a billionaire, but on the eve of their wedding, Shauna's fiancé was in a car accident and became a vegetable. Shauna didn't hesitate to cancel the marriage. Want me to wait on a vegetable hand and foot in my dreams, not wasting my whole life on a useless person? I'd rather die than marry him. Just then I saw Ethan. Ford's soul. His face was deathly pale, and his eyes were full of hatred as he looked at my adopted sister. She's so heartless. The doctor clearly said I'd wake up within 6 months if someone's willing to take care of me voluntarily. Once I wake up, I'll give her 200 million first thing just to piss off that bitch. My eyes lit up and I timidly raised my hand. How about I marry you? I really wanted that 200 million. I thought my adopted sister, Shauna, would try to stop me. After all, since we were kids, her greatest pleasure was opposing me and then enjoying watching me suffer. But unexpectedly this time, she snorted with laughter and casually shoved me forward. You're just a nuisance at home anyway. Going to wait on him hand and foot is perfect for you. Look at you acting like you've never seen a man before. Throwing yourself at even a vegetable. How pathetic. I kept my head down and didn't talk back, being able to escape this family and earn 200 million in the process. I couldn't wait to succeed in my pursuit, but Ethan's soul was so angry it floated behind Shauna, throwing punches at her constantly. Shauna, you used to tell me your sister Rose was always bullying you. Turns out it was all lies. You're the one who's been bullying Rose this whole time. I can't believe I was played like a fool by you. You bitch. His resentment was heavy. Even the surrounding air seemed to drop a few degrees. I quietly shrank my neck and walked up to Mrs. Ford on my own. I'm the biological daughter of the family. If you don't mind, Mrs. Ford, I'm willing to marry Ethan in my sister's place. Mrs. Ford's worried expression cleared. Immediately after Ethan's accident, they publicly stated he would recover quickly. If he got jolted at this critical moment, not only would they become a laughingstock, but people would lose confidence in the Ford family, affecting their stock price. I had clearly become the Ford family's lifeline. Mrs. Ford grabbed my hand excitedly. You're really willing. However, Ethan is unconscious right now and can't get a marriage license or have a wedding with you as long as you take good care of him and fulfill your duties as a wife. When he wakes up, the position of the Ford family's daughter-in-law will be yours. I nodded obediently. I'm very good at taking care of people. I've been caring for my paralyzed grandparents since I was little. The soul frowned and floated to my side. He looked me up and down, and a wave of cold air made my spine shiver. I pretended not to know of his existence and tried hard to sell myself. I can cook. I can help people turn over and bathe, and I'm very patient. My parents chimed in eagerly. That's right. Our Rose is born to serve others. Having her take care of Ethan is perfect. As her parents, we approve of this marriage. You should take her with you right away. My parents acted like they were throwing out garbage. They couldn't wait to kick me out the door. Behind the door came Shauna's shrill, mocking laughter. A freak and a vegetable. Two half dead. Waists a perfect match. The soul kept shaking his head. Shauna is too vicious. So, all her previous kindness and innocence was an act. I must have been blind. When I wake up, I'll give Rose 200 million immediately just to piss her on off. Watching the soul float through the wall, I prayed silently in my heart. That 200 million you promised you. Better keep your word. Half an hour later, I saw Ethan himself in the specialkare ward. He was thin, covered in tubes, relying on machines to maintain his vital signs. Mrs. Ford wiped her tears sadly. He has a brain injury. Although the surgery was successful, he still needs time to recover. At the shortest 6 months, at the longest 3 years. We want to maintain the Ford family's dignity, but we also want to find him a companion. Shauna should think about it. We can afford professional nurses. So why would we need her to do menial work? What Mrs. Ford meant was for a vegetative patient to wake up. They need strong emotional companionship. Ideally, someone should talk to him every day, keeping his brain actively thinking, which helps faster recovery. But Ethan's critical condition couldn't be shown to outsiders, and she was busy stabilizing the company. Shauna would have been the best choice, but unexpectedly, this important task ultimately fell to me. The soul stood by the hospital bed, his face ashen. I also thought Shauna would stick by me through thick and thin, but she completely broke my heart. I just want to find someone reliable to read me financial news every day. Why is that so hard? I don't know. If Rose can handle it. After listening to him ramble for a while, I understood. His body and consciousness were separated, which is why I could see his soul. When he woke up, his soul would naturally return to his body. After thinking it over, I laid out my plan. Plan to report news to Ethan every day, then continuously play movies and music for him. I'll describe the weather to him each day and try to let him smell various scents to strengthen his perception of the outside world. As for bathing and such, if Mrs. Ford doesn't mind, let me do it too. That way I can become more familiar with Ethan. Both Mrs. Ford and the soul thought I was making empty promises. They didn't believe I could be so thorough, thoughtful, and patient. But the next day, they were impressed when Mrs. Ford came to the ward. I had just finished shaving Ethan's beard, making him look much more refreshed. A newly released movie was playing on TV, and I would explain scenes to him from time to time. At the same time, I was holding a tablet, regularly reading financial news. Aloud next to Ethan's head was fruit tea I had made myself in fragrance masking the smell of disinfectant. I had even set up my own bed in the ward so I could stay with Ethan 24 hours a day. Mrs. Ford was deeply moved. Actually, you can sleep at the Ford house at night. I smiled and told Mrs. Ford as long as I didn't have to live in my original home, I was happy anywhere besides staying here. Strengthens my emotional connection with Ethan, which is good for waking him up. After I spoke, I sneaked a glance at the soul. His expression had improved considerably. Shauna is too spoiled. Even if she came, she couldn't take care of me properly. But this Rose seems quite reliable. I guess this is a blessing in disguise. It seemed I had passed Ethan's own evaluation. That made the next steps much easier. I began closely monitoring the soul's movements. Perhaps straying too far would affect the soul's return to the body. He generally just stayed in the ward, only going out for a walk when the weather was nice. The last time he took the risk to float that far was to see Shauna. Now that his heart was dead, it became obedient. When I took care of Ethan, the soul would ramble on beside me. How? Does Rose know I love opera? Looks like she did her homework. Not bad. Why? Doesn't she also find out that my favorite fruit is durian? Making me smell apples every day. I'm sick of it. The next day, I brought in a big durian and opened it in front of him. Ethan, guess how many sections of fruit are durian has? He held out some folder. I would manipulate Ethan's fingers, sometimes making a 6, sometimes making an 8. The soul would protest at first. Stop it. No one's ever dared treat me like this in my whole life. You think I'm your toy. Later, he got used to it. He would roll his eyes while secretly smiling, smelling the durian. Fragrance filling the ward. The soul's eyes gleamed brightly, his will to survive growing stronger. I'm craving this so much. I have to wake up quickly so I can enjoy it with Rose. After the soul spoke, the wavy line on the heart. Monitors showed subtle fluctuations. I also started eating the with gusto. You know, thanks to you, this is my first time eating durian. Back home, I could only eat rotten apples and oranges. The soul froze. I had gotten used to looking at Ethan's face. I opened my heart and confided in him like a friend. Your mom thinks I'm working so hard and gave me $100,000. Actually, at home, I had to take care of 3 people, Mom, Dad, and Shauna. Before, I also had to add Grandpa and Grandma. Now, I'm here and only have to take care of you. It's actually much easier. The soul floated to my side, gazing at me deeply without saying a word. That day, I calmly talked about many things, how my parents abused me, how Shauna had been bullying me all along. After pouring out all my grievances, I felt refreshed, but the soul's eyes had turned red. Are Rose's parents sick? Why don't they cherish such a good biological daughter, but instead dote on a spoiled adopted daughter? When I wake up, I must teach that family a good lesson for Rose. I was a bit touched, though the teaching part could be skipped. As long as the 200 million came through successfully, I'd be grateful. After that day, the soul and I became much closer. I still pretended not to know of his existence, but I fulfilled his every wish. He also stayed by my side, constantly watching everything I did. After continuing like this for 4 months, one day while I was manipulating Ethan's fingers again, Ethan's finger actually moved on its own. I joyfully notified Mrs. Ford. The good news spread quickly. Not only did a large group of experts come to consult on Ethan's case, but Shauna also burst into the ward. She glanced disdainfully at the vegetable on the bed and roughly dragged me outside. I heard Ethan is about to wake up. Seeing I didn't respond, Shauna slapped me across the face. You really think you've landed the Ford family? How dare you give me attitude? Shauna poked my nose and warned me, if Ethan really wakes up, you better get lost. I'll make Ethan believe I've been the one taking care of him all along. After all, I'm the woman Ethan loves. Even when he wakes up, he'll only marry me. The soul reacted faster than I did. As long as my brain can retain the soul's memories, I definitely won't marry you. After saying this, he paused again. But speaking of which, when I wake up, will I retain these memories? What if I forget everything? Can a soul's consciousness perfectly merge with the body's consciousness? I didn't even consider this. Oh no, what if I forget and really think Shauna was the one taking care of me? What do I do? Then I rubbed my cheek, equally anxious. Who? Ethan. Mary didn't really matter. The key issue was if Shauna stole my credit, wouldn't my 200 million go down the drain? The soul quickly slapped his forehead. I almost forgot about my mom. My mom has seen Shauna's true nature. She won't let me marry Shauna again. Right? Right. As long as my mom's around, she can prove that Rose was the one taking care of me all along. But unexpectedly, Shauna refused to give up and immediately went to find Mrs. Ford. She brazenly declared, you know Ethan's personality. Once he's set on me, he'll definitely marry me when he wakes up. You can't force him to marry a woman he doesn't even know, right? He survived this disaster. As his mother, you should fully support him, not interfere in his marriage. Mrs. Ford was actually swayed by this argument. She consulted with me awkwardly. Ethan doesn't know who took care of him anyway. I'll just say it was Shauna. They were in love to begin with, so it'll be natural for them to get married, and everyone will be happy. I'll give you generous compensation as long as you don't say anything. No one will know you were the one who took care of Ethan. Seeing me nod compliantly, the soul kept whispering in my ear, Rose, can you have some backbone? Why are you handing over your credit to someone else? I wanted to, but I had been submissive my whole life with no background, no Connections, no confidence. What could I fight with? The soul was frustrated. Forget it. I can't count on anyone. I better work hard and try retain these memories myself. After Shauna convinced Mrs. Ford to be extra safe, she released news to the media early. Under my devoted care, Ethan is finally about to wake up. We'll soon get our marriage license and have our wedding. I'll officially become Mrs. Ford very
soon.
Thank you all for your blessings. Everyone outside believed. In less than 6 months, Ethan's indicators showed his brain had completely recovered and he could wake up at any moment. And the soul was increasingly reluctant to part with me. Rose, I hope I can remember everything from this time when I wake up. God bless. I don't want to forget all the good things you've done for me. And I definitely don't want to mistake Shauna for my benefactor. I hope for the same, but this was all beyond my control. This day when I woke up, I didn't see the soul. I immediately realized Ethan was about to wake up. I immediately called Mrs. Ford and the experts. Shauna also rushed over with the media. Under countless expectant gazes, the experts performed pre-awakening medical procedures. With a beep, the vegetative Ethan actually slowly opened his eyes. Everyone held their breath, not daring to disturb him. Easily, Ethan lifted his fingers slightly, then swallowed with difficulty. He squinted at the ceiling, seemingly trying hard to remember something. At this moment, I could only pray that Ethan still retained the soul's memories and clearly remembered who had been taking care of him. But if he had forgotten, then I had not only wasted half a year of effort, but also handed everything over to Shauna on a silver platter. Shauna couldn't hold back and anxiously rushed to the bedside. Ethan, you're finally awake. I'm Shauna, the one you love most. For the past 6 months, I've been carefully taking care of you, waiting on you hand and foot, never leaving your side. I hung my head in dejection, about to leave. The next second, Ethan suddenly spoke, asking coldly, "It was really you taking care of me?" Shauna's face lit up with a brilliant, practiced smile. She stepped closer, her hand reaching out to touch his pale cheek, her voice dripping with a sweetness that made my stomach turn. Of course it was me, Ethan, she murmured, her eyes glistening with rehearsed tears. Who else would it be? The moment I heard about your accident, my heart broke. I couldn't bear the thought of you being alone in this cold room. I stayed by your side day and night, praying for the moment you'd open your eyes again. It was exhausting, but seeing you now every single second was worth it. Behind her, the media cameras clicked furiously, capturing her devotion for the evening news. Mrs. Ford stood slightly to the side, her expression tight, a mixture of guilt and relief warring on her face. She looked at me once, a silent plea in her eyes, reminding me of our agreement. I took a step back, my shoulder pressing against the cold hospital wall. My heart felt heavy, but I reminded myself of the reality of my life. I was Rose. I was the invisible daughter, the one who cleaned up the messes and took the blame. If stepping away meant getting enough money to never see my family again, it was a price I was willing to pay. But then Ethan didn't lean into Shauna's touch. Instead, he slowly raised his hand, the same hand I had spent hours massaging, stretching, and playing finger games with, and firmly gripped her wrist. He didn't do it gently. His grip was tight enough to make Shauna's smile falter. Is that so? Ethan's voice was raspy, dry from months of disuse, but it carried a chilling weight. You took care of me day and night? Yes, Ethan, Shauna stammered, a flicker of unease passing through her eyes, though she quickly recovered her composure. I did. I barely slept. I wanted to make sure you had the best care. Then tell me, Ethan said, his dark eyes locked onto hers, cold and piercing. Since you were here every day, what did you make for me to smell last week? Shauna blinked, her lips parting. Slightly. I what? Smell? My senses were partially active. Ethan lied smoothly, his voice steadying as he found his rhythm. The doctors told me that stimulating my sense of smell would help me wake up. Since you were the one taking care of me, you must remember the fruit you brought in. It had a very distinctive scent. I smelled it every day. Shauna's mind scrambled. She glanced nervously at Mrs. Ford, then back at Ethan, trying to play it off with a soft laugh. Oh, Ethan, you must have been dreaming. I kept the room filled with fresh lilies and roses. You know how much I love flowers. I wanted the room to smell beautiful for you. A heavy silence descended upon the ward. The reporters whispered among themselves, their cameras shifting focus from Shauna's face to Ethan's expression. Ethan's lips curved into a cold, humorless smile. Lilies and roses? No, that wasn't it. He let go of her wrist, pushing her hand away with a gesture of pure disgust. Shauna stumbled back a step, her face turning pale. The scent that filled this room was durian. Ethan said, his voice echoing in the quiet ward. A strong, pungent durian that my caretaker opened right in front of my bed. She even held my hand and guided my fingers to count the sections of the fruit. Shauna stared at him, utterly bewildered. Durian? Ethan, that's ridiculous. Why would anyone bring such a foul-smelling thing into an ICU? It's unhygienic. Because she knew I loved it. Ethan replied softly, his gaze finally shifting. His eyes scanned the room, bypassing his mother, bypassing the doctors and the media, until they landed directly on me, hiding in the shadows near the back door. And she did it because she wanted me to wake up. My breath hitched. The souls. Memories had retained them, every single one of them. Ethan looked at his mother, his expression hardening. Mother, you told me Shauna was the one who stayed here, but Shauna hates durian. She has always detested the smell. More importantly, she doesn't know how to shave a man without cutting him. Yet my face is perfectly smooth, and she certainly doesn't know how to read the daily financial reports without tripping over the terminology. Mrs. Ford's face flushed red with embarrassment. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The reporters were now whispering louder, the lenses of their cameras aiming directly at Shauna and Mrs. Ford. Where is she? Ethan demanded, his voice rising, though it was still rough. Where's the woman who actually sat by my side? The one who played the opera I liked, who explained the movies to me scene by scene, and who stayed in this ward 24 hours a day because she had nowhere else to go. The room was dead silent. Shauna's eyes darted around, panicked. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a sudden, vicious hatred. She realized in that moment that her elaborate lie was falling apart in front of the entire city's press. It was her, wasn't it? Ethan's voice softened as his eyes locked onto mine again. I stood frozen. I wanted to run. I had spent my entire life avoiding the spotlight, avoiding the wrath of my parents and Shauna. Whenever I stood up for myself, I was punished. My instinct was to slip out the door and disappear. But as I looked at Ethan, I saw a faint, translucent shimmer outline his body for a brief second. It was his soul sitting up within his physical form, giving me a ghostly, encouraging wink. Don't run, Rose. His voice seemed to echo in my mind, a remnant of the 4 months we had spent together. Stand up for yourself. Get what is yours. I took a deep breath. My hands were trembling, but I forced myself to take a step forward out of the shadows. It was me, Mr. Ford. I said, my voice quiet but clear. The chaos that followed was nothing short of a media circus. Shauna tried to scream, to accuse me of manipulating Ethan, of stealing her place, of being a freak who had somehow cast a spell on him. But Ethan didn't give her the chance to make a scene. He coldly ordered his security team to clear the ward of all reporters. Shauna and even my adoptive parents, who had been waiting outside to celebrate their success. Within 10 minutes, the ward was cleared. Only Ethan, Mrs. Ford, a couple of trusted doctors, and I remained. Mrs. Ford looked miserable. She sat on the edge of a chair, her head bowed. Ethan, I'm sorry. I only did it for the family's reputation, the stocks, the public image. Shauna was already your fiancé. It seemed like the easiest way to keep the company stable. At the expense of the truth? Ethan asked, his voice cold. At the expense of the person who actually saved my life. If Rose hadn't been here to talk to me, to keep my mind active, the doctor said I might have drifted deeper into the coma. You were willing to give all the credit to a woman who abandoned me the moment she thought I was useless? Mrs. Ford had no defense. She looked at me, her eyes filled with genuine shame. Rose, I apologize. I shouldn't have asked you to hide. It's fine, Mrs. Ford, I said quietly. I looked at Ethan. His face was still pale and thin, but the intelligence and fire in his eyes were unmistakable. He was no longer the helpless, drifting soul I had conversed with for months. He was the head of the Ford empire. Is it fine? Ethan asked, his gaze softening as he looked at me. You took care of me for 4 months, Rose. You tolerated my mother's doubts, your family's abuse, and you did it all with patience. I heard everything you said to me, every word. My cheeks flushed. I remembered all the things I had confessed to his comatose body. How my parents treated me like a servant. How Shauna bullied me. How lonely I had been my entire life. I had spoken to him because I thought he couldn't hear me, using him as a silent therapist. To know he remembered it all made me wanna shrink into a hole. You really remember? I whispered. I remember the rotten apples and oranges your parents made you eat, Ethan said, a deep, protective anger flashing in his eyes. I remember how they threw you out like garbage, and I remember a promise I made to you when I was just a drifting soul. He turned to his mother. Mother, call my personal attorney. Tell him to prepare a wire transfer of $200 million to Rose's account immediately. Mrs. Ford gasped. Ethan, 200 million? That is the price of my life. Ethan interrupted, his tone brook no argument. And it is a promise I made to her. Do it now. Mrs. Ford looked at her son's determined expression and knew better than to argue. She nodded slowly, took out her phone, and left the room to make the call. I stood there, my mind spinning. $200 million. It was a number so vast, so abstract to someone who had spent her life counting pennies that I couldn't even process it. Are you happy now? Ethan asked, a small, genuine smile finally breaking through his stern facade. You got your 200 million. You can leave that family behind forever. I looked at him, my throat tight. Think. You, Ethan. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, he said gently, but don't think this is the end. We still have a lot to talk about. For now, go get your money. Secure your freedom. I have some cleaning up to do. The transfer cleared the next morning. When I saw the string of zeros in my bank account by the mobile app I sat on the edge of my cheap bed in the hospital staff quarters and cried. For the first time in my life, I didn't have to worry about where I would sleep, what I would eat, or whose temper I would have to soothe just to survive the day. But my peace was short-lived. My phone rang continuously. It was my mother, my father, Shauna, each of them calling dozens of times. When I didn't answer, the text messages started flooding in. Rose, how dare you lock us out? We are your parents. You owe us everything. Shauna is in tears because of you. You ruined her life. Come home immediately, or we will report you to the police for elder abuse and theft. I stared at the screen, feeling a familiar tightness in my chest. Even with $200 million, the psychological chains of my childhood were hard to break. The instinct to obey, to apologize, to make myself small was deeply ingrained. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. No, I told myself, not anymore. I packed my few belongings into a single suitcase. I didn't want anything from that house. I walked out of the hospital, hailed a taxi, and went straight to a high-end real estate agency. Within 3 hours, I had rented a fully furnished penthouse in one of the most secure, private residential towers in the city. The rent was astronomical, but to me, the security and privacy were worth every penny. As I settled into my new home, looking out at the sprawling city, skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I felt a strange sense of emptiness. For months, my life had been defined by caring for Ethan. I had listened to his complain, laugh, and comfort me. Now he was awake, surrounded by doctors, family, and lawyers. He didn't need me anymore. The transaction was complete. I had my money, and he had his life. I should have been thrilled, but as I sat in the quiet, luxurious apartment, I missed the grumpy, durian-loving soul who used to float around my ward. 2 weeks passed. During this time, the media went wild. The story of Shauna's deceit had leaked, likely pushed by the Ford family's PR team to distance themselves from her. The public learned that Shauna had abandoned Ethan when he was in a coma, only to return and try to take credit for his recovery when he woke up. The Ford family officially announced the cancellation of the marriage contract between Ethan Ford and Shauna. The adopted family's reputation was ruined. Their business partners pulled out, and their social standing plummeted. One afternoon, as I was returning to my apartment building after buying some groceries, I saw 3 familiar figures waiting near the entrance. It was my parents and Shauna. They looked disheveled. Shauna's expensive designer clothes looked wrinkled, and her face was puffy from crying. My mother's hair was messy, and my father looked older, his face etched with anger and desperation. As soon as they saw me, they rushed forward. The building security guards immediately moved to block them, but Shauna screamed my name. Rose, you ruined everything. Shauna shrieked, her face contorting with rage. You stole Ethan from me. You played the victim and made us look like monsters. My mother tried to push past the guard, her voice cracking with forced emotion. Rose, my sweet daughter, how can you be so heartless? You moved into this luxury place and left your parents to starve? We raised you. We gave you a roof over your head. You have hundreds of millions now, and you won't even help your own family? I stopped a few feet away, protected by the security guards. I looked at them, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel afraid. I focused, my eyes tapping into the ability I had tried so hard to hide my entire life. I looked at their souls. My mother's soul was a dark, muddy brown, twisted with greed and malice. It was reaching out toward me like a claw, hungry for my wealth, without a single speck of maternal warmth. My father's soul was a dull, heavy gray, suffocated by anger and pride. He didn't care about me. He only cared about the money I had and the embarrassment I had caused him. And Shauna's soul, it was a chaotic, toxic, black-purple, spitting resentment and jealousy. She wanted to tear me down, destroy me, even if it meant destroying herself. Seeing their true nature so clearly washed away any lingering guilt I had. They had never loved me, not for a single second. I was nothing but a tool to them, a servant to be used and discarded. I don't owe you anything, I said, my voice cold and steady. I took care of you, Shauna, and our grandparents. For years, I did all the chores, took all the blame, and ate your leftovers. The debt of raising me has been paid back tenfold with my labor. You ungrateful brat, my father roared, his gray soul flaring with ugly anger. We are your parents. We can sue you for support. We will make sure the whole world knows what a cold-blooded monster You are. Go ahead, I said quietly. Sue. Me, but remember, the Ford family has the best lawyers in the country. And if you try to drag my name through the mud, I will make sure the details of how you treated me as a child are made public. I'm sure the media would love to know how the noble family abused their biological daughter while pampering an adoptive one. My mother choked on her words, her muddy soul flickering with sudden fear. They knew they had no ground to stand on. Rose, Shauna pleaded, her tone suddenly shifting to a pathetic whine. We're sisters, please. The Ford family canceled our contract. Our family's company is going bankrupt. If you just give us 50, no 30 million, we can save the business. You have so much. Why are you being so greedy? I looked at Shauna, almost feeling pity for how pathetic she was. I gave you the chance to marry Ethan, Shauna. You were the one who called him a useless vegetable and threw him away. I didn't steal your future. You threw it in the trash. I turned my back on them and walked into the building. Rose, Rose. Shauna screamed behind me, her voice fading as the heavy glass doors closed, shutting out their noise and their toxic presence. As I rode the elevator up to my penthouse, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The past is finally dead. I was free. A month after Ethan woke up, I received an invitation. It wasn't a formal letter, but a simple text message from Ethan himself. I'm fully discharged from the hospital. The doctors say I'm fit enough to return to work. I'm holding a private dinner at my residence tonight. Just you and me. No media, no family. Will you come? My heart fluttered. I hadn't seen him since the day he woke up, though we had texted occasionally. I knew he had been busy reclaiming his position at the Ford Group, which had been thrown into chaos. During his coma, I spent 2 hours deciding what to wear, finally settling on a simple, elegant dark green dress. I didn't want to look like I was trying too hard, but I also wanted to look like the independent woman I had become, not the meek servant he had known in the hospital. When the car Ethan sent arrived at his private estate, I was led into a beautiful, glass-walled dining room overlooking a lush, illuminated garden. Ethan was sitting at the table. He was no longer the frail, pale patient. He wore a tailored charcoal suit that fit his broad shoulders perfectly. His hair was neatly styled, and his face had regained its healthy color. He looked incredibly handsome, carrying the natural authority of a man born to lead. But when he saw me, his stern expression melted into a warm, familiar smile. He stood up, though he still had a slight limp, and walked over to pull out my chair. You look beautiful, Rose, he said, his voice deep and smooth, no longer raspy. Thank you, Ethan, I said, taking my seat. You look much better than the last time I saw you. A lot less green, I hope, he joked, referring to his hospital state. He sat down opposite me. I have to apologize for not contacting you sooner. Reclaiming the company was chaotic. My mother had made some decisions during my absence that needed to be corrected. I understand. You have a massive responsibility, I said. The dinner was served exquisite, delicate dishes that were a far cry from the hospital food we had lived around. We talked about his recovery, the company, and my new apartment. It was comfortable, like talking to an old friend, yet there was a new underlying tension between us. He was no longer a silent soul. He was a real, powerful man sitting inches away from me. As the dessert was cleared, Ethan leaned back, his eyes fixed on me. Rose, there's something I need to ask you, he said, his tone turning serious. What is it? When I was in the coma, my soul was detached from my body. I could see everything, hear everything, but I also felt things on a deeper level. I felt a strange connection with you. It wasn't just because you took care of me. It was as if you could feel me too. Sometimes when I spoke, you would react. When I complained about the apples, you brought durian the very next day. When I was angry, you would shrink Away, as if you felt the cold. He leaned forward, his dark eyes searching mine. Can you see things that others can't? Rose. My heart stopped. My ability was my deepest, most dangerous secret. It was the reason my parents had called me a freak and locked me in dark rooms as a child. I never told a single living soul. I looked down at my hands, my knuckles turning white. Ethan gently reached across the table and covered my hands with his. His touch was warm and reassuring. You don't have to tell me if you're not ready, he said softly. But I want you to know, whatever it is, I don't think you're a freak. You saved my life. Your sensitivity, your connection to me, it was the only anchor I had when I was drifting in the dark. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have found my way back to my body. I looked up into his eyes, and then I did something I had never done before. I focused my vision and looked at Ethan's soul. It was no longer detached or pale. It was a brilliant, radiant golden amber, fully integrated into his physical body, pulsing with warmth, strength, and a deep, genuine affection. For me, it was the most beautiful soul I had ever seen. Tears welled in my eyes. Yes, I whispered. I can see souls. I've been able to see them since I was a child. I can hear them speak, too. That's why my parents hated me. They thought I was cursed. Ethan didn't flinch. He didn't look at me with fear or disgust. Instead, his grip on my hands tightened and his eyes filled with a profound tenderness. They were fools, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You aren't cursed, Rose. You have a beautiful gift, and I am the luckiest man alive because that gift allowed you to find me. He stood up, walked around the table, and knelt down on one knee beside my chair. He took a small velvet box from his pocket and opened it, revealing a stunning, flawless emerald ring. I know. We've only officially known each other as awake people for a short time, Ethan said, looking up at me, but my soul has loved you for months. I don't want to marry Shauna, and I don't want to marry for a business alliance. I want to marry the woman who held my hand in the dark. Rose, will you marry me? Not as a replacement for your sister, but as yourself, the true mistress of the Ford family. I looked at the emerald ring, then at his radiant, golden soul, which was wrapping around me like a warm embrace. For the first time in my life, I felt completely safe. I felt seen, cherished, and loved for exactly who I was. Yes, Ethan, I whispered, tears of happiness spilling over my cheeks. I will. Our wedding was private, held on a beautiful cliffside overlooking the ocean, attended only by those who truly cared for us. Shauna and my adoptive parents tried one last time to cause a scene, leaking wild stories to the press about my witchcraft and how I had manipulated Ethan. But Ethan's legal, and PR teams were ruthless. They released evidence of Shauna's abandonment of Ethan, along with financial records showing how my parents had systematically exploited me. The public backlash against them was absolute, and they were forced to flee the city, bankrupt and disgraced, never to bother us again. On the evening of our wedding, as Ethan and I stood on the balcony of our new home, watching the sunset over the water, I felt a deep sense of peace. I looked at my husband. His physical body was strong, his mind was sharp, and his golden soul was glowing brighter than ever, forever. Tethered to mine, I'd spent my life surrounded by the cold, dark whispers of the dead and the ugly souls of the living. But in the end, it was my curse that had guided me through the dark, leading me to the one soul that could truly bring me into the light.